Hello, everyone. Okay, we are back. Sorry, playing around with stuff. Hi, we are back again. Tonight, planning on diving back into my SourceWeaver stuff. I've been really wanting to poke at it. I did a little bit off stream just to get a couple things going. Um, it's been nice. I've been enjoying this. This has been very fun for me to build out. So I usually go with what I'm having fun doing, and you all get to come along for the ride. So, Grinds, hello, welcome in. Good to have you. So let's see. So that is where we're going to head tonight. We're going to try a couple crazy things. So I installed Visual Studio updates. Like that's what I was waiting to finish a moment ago. So this is going to be hot bits, very hot bits. So a couple things here. So one thing I'm going to point out to people. I'm running a canary build. So this is like as a MVP, we get access to early release builds of Visual Studio, which is cool. It also means we get to experience the bugs first, which is less cool. But hopefully this goes and makes it better so that when it hits for the people who maybe are on Insider's Ring, which is the next ring out, or the, I don't know what they call it, production, stable, normal ring. I don't know. It's been so long since I haven't run at least like an Insider's build. I tend to run a lot of preview software. So for people interested, this is the repo here. Copy link if anybody wants to play along at home. So the premise of this guy here is we are making source generators easier to author. And it's not going to cover all cases, but it's going to cover the common ones. Just as a way of being able to say, hey, here is an easy way to leverage this, because they are an incredibly powerful tool. And I feel like oftentimes source generators, and eventually I plan on adding analyzers into this, they get ignored because they are incredibly difficult to author. They require you to kind of understand a bit of Roslyn, which is the C# compiler, and be able to reason about code that way. And in some ways that's good. Like that's kind of having that kind of bar for entry isn't a bad thing. But there's a lot of cases where I feel like we could make our lives a lot easier, especially if we had a better API. So this is that. This is making a simpler API. And just to clarify, I don't think that this will ever replace needing to author your own generators, because by making it simpler, I'm obviously having to cut some things out. There will be times where people need those things, and in that case, just author a regular source generator. Okay. But I'm trying to make the easy things easy. That's the goal. So we are making the easy things easy, and that's where we're going. So, and I had a backlog. So I've started putting things in, and I'm trying to decide where we land. One moment. Bum. Ding. There we go. Okay. So, stuff to handle in here. I was thinking about dealing with the nullability stuff or the hint names, but I think what I actually want to do, the diagnostics could be interesting, but I think I actually want to do iterating over assembly members to be able to say, hey, I want to build up a generator that generates something over all of these. So step one, let's close the Visual Studio installer. Close some other stuff down so I don't have nearly as much stuff going. Yeah, there we are. Okay, cool. We're good. Okay, so the premise here is I've got a sample app, and this is kind of where I try to just lay out what I think I want to have happen, right? So step one is what is my common use case that I'm looking to do here? Because if I want to iterate over all assembly members, So the use case that I could think of is iterating over all EF entities and then using those to maybe generate controller endpoints for CRUD over the top of them. That's kind of one thought that I have. And so we are going to do something of that nature. So public class db context, and I'm going to name it like it's EF, but we aren't going to actually like go reference EF or anything, because the whole point of this is just to lay out the API that I want, and then we go beat it into submission. So we don't need anything fancy. So public class entity one. No, well, let's make it a little more real. Let's do person. Person will have a string name. Get set. Yeah, we'll make it required, I guess. And then we will do public date only birthday. Sounds good. That sounds like a thing. Okay. And then we will do public person DB context. I actually want this, but I don't want the other bit. I need another entity. Animal, because I can't come up with anything. My brain is not working right now. Acquired, and then that's probably good enough. Okay. And then we're going to change this guy up here to be... Nope. Why are you not... Collection initializer. Thank you. And we're going to go here, and we are going to go with animals, and we're going to go with animal. There. Okay. So now we have a thing. So this is our fake-ish project. Great. Fine. Good enough. Now we come down here, and we do things like... let's call it CRUD controller generator. Right, so this guy here is going to be our thingy-mabobber. And our other generators that we built were like this, right? They ended up being something akin to this nature. I'm trying to remember why I couldn't put this on the base class. Is there a good reason? Oh, yes. Yeah, it's only allowed on the... Okay. Only on the derived. Okay, got it. So... this guy here had a class attribute that he was targeting, which was fine. And in this case, I think it, trying to decide what I call it. Assembly type generator? Maybe. Let's do that. Something like this. Assembly type generator. And I don't know that there's anything we can realistically anchor this on. So what we are going to do is we're going to come up to our SDK, and we're going to make it exist. Right? So it will be public abstract class assembly type generator. Because when in doubt, you just make the API exist, and then you make it work. We're going to move that there, move that there. Don't know why you aren't showing up. You know what? We should just... let's global using this thing in. I think is what we're going to do. So we're just going to go here. Let's see. Item group. Let's see. Add a global using to... Nope. Include. There. Now we don't need any of that garbage. Done. Okay. And then, sort of what I expect, because the other ones have this generate method thingy here, I kind of expect something similar to this. I kind of expect assembly type context, maybe, as the type to exist, return something of that nature. So let's go up here, and we're going to make this signature exist on this guy. So abstract, that's now a thing. And then the context, we're going to need this. So let's see, public class assembly type context, generation context, and yeah, so that now exists. That is now a thing. Okay. That exists, that exists, that exists. Great. So now I should have context add output. Good. And just like the other ones that we had down here, we do something of this nature. I kind of feel like generation result is kind of meaningless at this point, because the simple thing is if you don't want to generate, you just don't do anything. Like, because if you add things to the context and then skip, I don't know, feels wrong, man. Feels wrong. We'll deal with it in a second. So we generate from current context. What is this doing? Izzy, Merry Christmas. Welcome in. We're just having a little bit of fun. Hopefully next week I've got some fun announcements for people too. More fun for me than for others, but we'll go with it. So this just generation, it adds an output. I kind of want to put the word like create from context. Create new from context. I don't know what I want. Let's see. So kind of what I want to build on here then is I want to go for each var type in context assembly types, maybe. Let's see here, because I think what I want to do is I want to hunt out let's see, if type dot name equals db context, and then I kind of want to just iterate. And won't be streaming while you're away. No, Izzy. The announcement is much better for you than that. I hopefully it means I will have more time to focus on streaming. So it's a good thing. So if you enjoy these streams, my announcement will be in your favor. If you don't like these streams, I don't know why you're here. Okay. So something of that nature. I don't know how much I love this, but I need something like that. Reach var property in type properties. Let's see here. Stop it. And then properties. Let's see where. And again, we're making this API up as we go. Where x property type is trying to decide how I want to do this. I don't know. This is going to be dumb. This is not what I want. But I can't decide what I want. I can't decide if I want the Roslyn APIs or the reflection API. So, let's see. Where? Let's see. But I do want something like this. Select x dot generic type argument sub-0. Yeah, it's something like that. Like it's gonna be something of this nature, right? I don't know exactly what this is gonna look like, but it's gonna look something like that, right? And then for each entity type, let's see here. Actually, what we're gonna do is we're gonna come down here, and then we're gonna do let's see here, 1 second. Okay. And then I probably need something of the nature that's like private. Because what is output? Output. This adds all the stuff in, which is fine. Private static void generate a controller. Thank you, Copilot. You've made up something that looks something we are not going to add a using. That's dumb. We're not going to add any of that stuff. That's dumb. We're not going to add that. That's dumb. We just need it to look reasonable. So I know it made something that looks realish. And I don't actually need it to look realish. Let's see. Get, we'll just return a list of the entities. Yeah, I mean, no, but this will be good because we'll have to deal with the S problem there. Get will be, yeah. So we're just gonna do maybe we'd rather entity name service, right? We'll just generate a service class. That okay. Entity service generator. There we go. When in doubt, just change your sample. There we go. Problem solved. And then that goes there. That goes to. And then context. Let's do find by ID. Whatever. We'll leave it. Return. No. Okay. That'll force us to deal with a bunch of stuff along this. We'll name this generate service. There we go. Let's see here. Rename this to service name. That goes like that. That goes like that. That looks more realistic. Okay. Generate service is going to be output and entity type and all kinds of other stuff. Great. One of the joys of using person as your entity. That way people is the plural. Right? That way you can't just do the simple add s cheater mode, or she'd actually think. So it'll do something of that nature, and it'll look something like this. So the key thing here then is this needs to output types. And this is where class context. So this is where I'm wondering if it makes more sense to get away from just doing strings and having something a little more simplistic over the top. Kind of tempted to do something like this and start organizing this. So add new folder. So I'm tempted to move a bunch of these things down and start organizing them. Yep. Change the namespaces. Move this up here. Yep. Do it. Let's see. Why is this called source-gen attribute? We may kill off this class to begin with. White space interpolated handler, yes. So, output. So we're going to put this guy up there. Yep. We're going to do this. Yes. No on that one. That goes there. Yes. string builder goes into the output namespace. Yes. The attribute generator goes in the generator one. Yes. Accessibility extensions. What is this? That goes in output. Yeah. Let's see. Context. Trying to decide where the context stuff goes. Do contexts go inside of the generators? I think the context goes under types, because I think what we're going to do is we're going to change up what the context holds, and the context is going to ultimately end up holding our abstraction over types. Let's see. Generation output obviously goes in output. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. That goes there, that goes there, that goes there. Let's see where we're building. Maybe I should just validate that this guy's building. Okay, so test needs that guy included. Let's see, I'm mostly just scanning the project, because if it's all sample app stuff, I do not care. Okay, it's just sample app stuff. Property change generator. But this is all sample app. Okay. Okay. So let's just check these guys here. Okay. So now let's continue down the path that we were going for. So I think what I want to do is change up how this guy gets set, right? Is one, I think I want to rename this from class to type name. Or is it only, is it really limited to classes? Who sets this? Find references. Is it actually limited? No. This is type. So this should really be type name rather than class name. So we're going to do this as type name, generation type context. Okay. Because I think what I want to do is, I was using the context initially as a way of being the abstraction level over the symbol, right? So that was, but I don't really want to expose it out that way, because there's a little bit of muddling in here with this generation context. So the context is going to be, for people who know like a Blackboard pattern, it's the one that's going to hold the state that's going to flow through these outputs. But I also need it to hold data, but I need to reuse that data. And so having this as strings doesn't work well. So I think what I want to do is create an abstraction over the type system that can be my simple one that works. I think is what we're going for. So I don't want to use type though, because type is, I'm hesitant to use the word symbol on top of it. Type is the right name for what it represents. Keeping it named in line with the reflection APIs probably makes a lot of sense. I'm tempted to do item. I don't like it, but I'm in lieu of a better name right now, we're gonna go with it. We're gonna go with this for now. So this is going to be a type item. And then public class namespace item. We're going to do this. And we're going to do this. And we're going to do like this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. Move to namespace item. So this is going to be our lightly done type definition or type spec. Ooh, I like definition. I like definition. We're going to go with that instead. Thank you. Because definition feels a little better. Because we're also going to expose out the Roslyn APIs through it, so everything that I miss will hopefully flow through nicely. So what this means then is this guy here isn't going to have a namespace. What he's going to have is a namespace definition. Nope, that is not what I typed. So namespace. We're gonna do that, I think. That looks a little better. And then now let's build here to see how much that broke. Let's see, namespace definition. So I namespace symbol. So what I want to do is namespace definition. I want to do from symbol. Or actually, maybe what I'll just do is new, because we're going to end up exposing it. Not really. And I want to do type symbol dot containing namespace. We're going to do that. That way it's all wrapped up in one nice little bow. This little guy is going to end up going inside of him. So we need to do empty constructor for nothing. Maybe we don't do an empty constructor. Maybe we don't do an empty one. Let's see. Where's that? That goes there. Let's see here. So this here becomes symbol. I think we're going to allow nullable. And then this becomes namespace. No, stop it. Stop it, stop it, stop it. Empty string. There. That goes like that. Okay, so that handles that. Let's check the SDK project. Still have a couple. So this becomes namespace definition. New. Thank you, Dunce Pilot. You've been very helpful. Yeah, this feels better because whenever I can delete code, it feels better. I like when I can delete code. I like when I can delete code. Okay. And that actually lends itself nicely, because this, rather than being type, it is a little awkward with the inheritance model that I've built. Because now I want to make this a type definition, right? And so now the question is, does type definition have something different? Kind of. Is this? No, the other one's nullable. We should keep it the same for now. So we're going to do this as type name. Then rename this to type name. There we go. I delete code all the time, usually because I have just written twice as much code to replace it elsewhere. Yes, but it gives me that warm fuzzy feeling like I'm on the right path for something. Let's see. So this is context. This is type name. I'm kind of trying to decide if this should be non-nullable. We're gonna do this. What is your problem here with this? Is it because this thing has missing compiler required? Oh, because he doesn't have the because this thing doesn't have the got it. We gotta shim this sucker in. Hang on. I got you. Required member attribute. So all we end up doing here, Hessen, I have one WPF beginner question. Great, fire it away. Always happy to answer. I realize I haven't been doing as much WPF recently, but do not let that stop you from asking questions. Wonder if I should make a different folder for these. Add folder shims. We're gonna start adding these things in. Let's just put them in here. Let's see. Add new item. And then I want this to be required member. Nope. I want that to be there, and I want to go here, and I just want all the things. Boom. And then, let's see here. Okay, so that goes like that, that goes like that. And I think I actually want to put this on my... Oh, already had it. Great. Let's see. So when using Microsoft Dependency Injection in WPF, where is the line between objects that should be resolved via dependency injection versus those created the new keyword? If we use new, we break the DI chain and lose access to some injected service. But if we register it in DI to preserve injection, we are forced to propagate constructor injection all the way down. Even with a factory pattern, the factory has to be injected all the way down, or am I overthinking this? You are not overthinking it, Hessen. And okay, I'm going to show you something, and then I'm going to preface it with this is a bad idea. Okay, but it proves a point. So I have a library. Where is it? Huh? Hang on. Not showing up in my search. I think it's because I probably marked it as archived, so that hopefully people stop. No? I don't know why. Okay. So I experienced the exact same problem. And so I wrote this library. And this library down here, and you can go through and read all about it. It has the same dependency injection stuff. But let me just show like maybe some of the tests. Core lib maybe. Oh, this is, where is the, I file link so much stuff around. Okay. Right, so here's the premise behind this library. Is this library operates under this idea that sometimes you do want to call new on an object, right? The problem is the saying goes new is glue, because a constructor is effectively a static method invocation. Because it is tied directly to a type, it is going to invoke that one method. There is no inheritance hierarchy, any of that stuff. So when you call new, you are tightly coupling two objects together. Now, I wanted to do exactly what you were describing, because it's very obnoxious when you're 3 levels, 4 levels, 5 levels deep, and you realize, oh, I want to inject my iLogger right here. oh shoot, I have to add my iLogger into this constructor call, and now boop, 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 that runs all the way up the chain, like you were saying, and it propagates all the way through. It is very annoying. So I had this idea of, well, what if I still call new on my objects, but I decorate them up like this, where functionally functionally I can still call new class with dependencies, and because these are optional, the compiler will just inject nulls in for me at the call site. What this library does here is it rewrites this constructor and does DI resolution somewhere between this closing paren here and this opening curly brace here. It's I really, big head's in the way, like that. Right, so it injects a static DI lookup where it goes back to the root DI container and says, hey, do I have, in this case, an I service? If so, I'm going to resolve it, and I'm going to set the value of my constructor parameter before I get to this first curly brace. That way, the rest of this code continues to work. And this code passes, right? Like if I go back here, these are classes with types. Where is a usage of... Let me find a usage of one of these things. There's test assembly. Wasn't I just in test assembly? Where all of these, my set, it's been a long time since I've done this. And to be clear, I do not recommend you go down this route. Just to be perfectly clear. This is not the solution. Where are the bloody tests? There's the classes and the setups, but where is the full... Where's the actual test? Am I an idiot? I might have to go through and find these. In this case, you're going to trust me for a moment. The problem with this is it doesn't actually solve the problem, right? Like you can have this, why ever not? It looks like it could be useful. So there's a couple reasons why this fails, and I'll get to why. So first of all, you should question how the heck it works. And the answer to that is it works by a technique called IL weaving. So it takes your assembly post-compilation and then rewrites the IL after the fact. It also will rewrite your PDB file so that that fancy code that it injects between this closing paren and this opening curly brace, you can actually step through it with the debugger. Like you can actually see it run. I was quite proud of this library at the time. I was very proud of myself because it's like I've just done some very evil stuff with IL weaving. And like once you start IL weaving, like all bets are off, right? Like you can do stuff that the compiler doesn't allow at that point because what's a compiler? You don't have to play by C# rules anymore. You only have to play by IL rules. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do in IL that there's just not an equivalent for in C#. Sounds like a Foddy Weaver. That is an early version of this library was based on Foddy. And then when Foddy changed their licensing, I actually killed Foddy and effectively built my own Weaver framework. So yeah, some of those are really useful. They absolutely can be. They absolutely can be. A couple key problems with them. So, well, we'll get to the problems with those in a minute. Let's go back to the DI question first. The problem with this type of tactic is it still has a static call in it. And even though the static call is generated and hidden away from you, and initially that was my argument is, yes, this is an anti-pattern, but it's an anti-pattern that is generated and checked at compile time, so I don't care. And I realized later I actually do kind of care, because what it ends up leveraging is, well, this class and then the global DI class are the two key ones. Is this global DI thing is ultimately what you see it generate a call to, and you'll note it has calls for get service, right? Which looks remarkably like an I service provider. It's a very similar API over the top of this thing to say, hey, do I have a service provider? How do I resolve it? The thing is the moment you go down this path, you're always going to have some level of problems at a certain point, especially when you start talking about multi-threading and similar, especially in a unit test world where maybe you don't want to hold on to all of these. Because the problem that we eventually hit, which you don't ever hit right away, like for smaller projects, this type of tactic works really, really well, right? For bigger projects, eventually it starts to, like, it shows some cracks. Because you can make yourself a static class. Like, you don't actually need this library, just to be clear. If you want to do this yourself, you can declare your objects with nullable interface members and just call new on them. And inside of your constructor, you can make a static class like this global DI thingy that holds on to your service providers or your DI container, right? Whichever flavor you like. And you can just say, oh, if the parameter comes in as null, I'm going to make a static call to my DI container and look it up. You need a static reference to your DI container, which inside of a WPF app isn't that hard. Most of the time, you can have a singleton iService provider. It's the thing you set up in your probably app.xaml.cs. You can make a static property for it, and you can call app.myserviceprovider.getService, right? And it will work. And you don't need this library or IO Weaver or any of that stuff, right? Like, you can just do that inside of your constructor. And the advantage of having it take in a null is then in your unit tests, if you pass in a test double like a mock, the value is not null. You never hit that static lookup because your unit tests always pass in non-null values. If you use something like AutoMocker, it guarantees non-nulls go in there, at least as much as it can. It's going to always try to generate something. It doesn't like to put a null in unless you explicitly ask for it. And so it gives you an easy way to go through and do this. And in some places in WPF, this is kind of valid. Because if you have things like behaviors inside of WPF where you're like, man, I've written this localization service. This, like, I realize that's kind of a DI thing, but my behavior really needs to access it so that it can display the right text for, you know, insert users locale here, right? Like, or, you know, it needs to do this other, you know, thing that I've written. That's a DI service. It's hard to put that into a behavior inside of WPF because there's not a way to inject it. Because anything that ultimately gets created at the UI level, you don't own the construction of. Right? If you make a user control is another common one that people run into. User controls, you can't put in those overloaded or I should put it this way. You must have a default constructor because that's what the XAML is going to invoke. The default constructor doesn't have DI resolution to it, right? Nikolai actually had put together kind of a proof of concept for the community toolkit of kind of a workaround approach to try to like DI in those types of situations, because in order to make those things work, you have to not let the WPF system call new on your user control or behavior or whatever. You have to say, well, actually, I'm going to register this user control with my DI container, and then I'm going to DI resolve it so that its constructor gets called appropriately with all of the needed dependencies. We're off to the races. That's fine, but then you give up some of like the designer functionality and back and forth. Like it's like, it's worth remembering that WPF was built prior to a lot of this DI stuff gaining a lot of popularity. So that was never a design goal when it was being built. Unfortunate. And your question there doesn't necessarily mention UI stuff either, but it is, you know, a deep nesting hierarchy to be able to go through and do this. And then propagate the constructor injection all the way down. So couple things to point out. One, in some cases, yes, propagating constructor injection all the way down is the quote unquote right way to do it. It is a bit of a judgment call, and a few things I would tell people to avoid doing. I get twitchy. I saw a PR actually just earlier today from a teammate who put iService provider in their constructor args, and I went, I don't like this. I don't like this. This feels wrong, right? Because it's passing it in as a dependency, but it's like, yeah, I know, iService provider. The only reason you pass that in is because you want to resolve other stuff. In this case, it ended up being valid, calling external lib, whatever, right? Okay, fine. You had to satisfy that constraint. I get it. Fine, we'll accept it. But that is oftentimes the quote unquote right way to do it. The other option, and you kind of alluded that you've probably already found it here, right, with the factory pattern being injected all the way down, is oftentimes one of the problems with just doing DI at the constructor level and pushing it all the way down is you quickly start getting those constructors that have 8, 9, 10, 18 parameters, right? Like they just keep like, oh, I need this thing, and then I need this thing, and then I need this thing, right? And you just, over time, it's fairly common to see people's constructors get bigger because of it. Because doing that constructor DI injection is the only tactic that they have. The factory pattern is often a way to try to cut some of that down, because usually when I start looking at classes, one, there is a question of, does the class violate single responsibility principle if it has like 18 parameters? Because the answer is almost assuredly yes. Not always, but it's a strong indicator if you've got a lot of constructor parameters that there is a good chance you violated single responsibility principle. But often that factory pattern, which I think you've found, Hessen, as far as doing this, is a way of kind of cutting some of that off, of encapsulating some of that logic together so that you don't have to pass as many parameters down, right? It says, well, I'm going to wrap up some bit of these dependencies, because some dependencies get passed down just so that they can be used for other dependencies further on, right? And I may ask this, on your factory patterns, there is just grab it. I want to show mkdir .NET new kaboo WPF, right? Huh? Oh, if you don't type the word new, it doesn't actually work. Okay, I was very confused there for a second. Very, very confused. Let's pop this open, and Canary sounds great. Canary is not crashing on me today, which means whatever bug was crashing on me a couple weeks ago has been fixed. So, yay! Okay, so for example, this one has the DI registration stuff in it, or at least it has some number of things in here, right? So one of the other techniques, right? Because sometimes what you end up with, like this main window here, let's make some stuff here real quick, just as proof of concept. So public interface iService1, boom, 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 2, 3, right? So we're gonna do iService1, S1, iService2, S2, iService3, right? S3, right? And oftentimes these parameters only exist to be passed down, but there's two different cases of being passed down, right? If you're passing them down because you need to do base on them, right? Like S1, S2, right? That's one thing. But if you're taking these things in just so that you can call new foo, right? Because let's imagine we have public class foo, and it's iService1, right? Like, and it's like, well, I need to be able to create a foo inside my code, and so I need this iService1, iService2, right? S1, S2, S3, right? Like, this is one option. And again, I think what you were describing a second ago, class foo factory, right? Like, and then rather than this needing to be in here, this becomes foo factory, right? And then the way you get your new foo is you call foo factory create foo, right? And pull this back. And so you've cut your parameter count down, or at least shifted it around to somewhere else where this goes. And then Just going to keep going. One other thing to point out: services add singleton. Because I just want to show this one. Yes, I think that's how I do it. Okay, perfect. Just to make sure you're aware of this trick here, func foo. So what you can do here is service provider, right? And you can do let's see, SP get required service. Yeah, like that. What is your problem? Oh. So this is what I have sometimes called the poor man's factory pattern, right? Is rather than creating up an entire factory, you can kind of do lightweight factories. These again, this is a very purpose-built. It may not work in all situations, but rather than having to build a factory class, you can actually build and register a func of the type, right? So you register up func of foo rather than foo factory. And then this guy down here changes to be func of foo. And then foo f gets foo factory, like that, right? Again, this only works when your factory has exactly one single create function and it doesn't need to do anything overly fancy, right? Like this is, but it can save you on having to, do any of this number if the only purpose of this is to isolate DI purposes all the way down, right? The other thing, like I said, that you can do, and this one is more highly situational. So inside of, I'll call it your the view model layer on down. So if you are in the view model or model layers, I would not do the following. But if hypothetically, say you are in your code behind where it's less convenient to be able to get at it, it is not unheard of, right, to do public static I service provider, right? Services, right? Of something of this nature, private set, right? And then usually we do something like null bang just to shut up the nullability warnings to say there's no realistic way through this. And then this create host builder here. What we end up doing is we'll do it after the start. Down here, we'll do services gets services, right? Like something of that nature. And then you can technically circumvent. So like here, if I decide that I really need it, app.services get required service ice service 1 or 2 or whatever I need, right? So you can still leverage static references. You have to be a little careful. And like I said, what you've done is you've traded the coupling that was at your constructor for a static invocation instead. And again, inside of at the view level, that in WPF, that's sometimes okay. It is sometimes okay to go through and do that and say, you know what, I just need to be able to go through and get at that sucker and pull the thing out because, it's a logger, it's a localization service, right? There's some DI stuff that you do want in your view level and you can pull things back. Again, like if I was public class, my behavior, right? Like there's nothing stopping me from doing private read only I service 1. Turns out spelling counts, right? And then you can actually just do that straight inside the class. And now you haven't had to propagate anything. The constructor's clean, empty constructor, but you do have to do battle with the fact that you've now made yourself kind of untestable because of this. Now, you can get so If testability is a concern with this, there is one more thing that is worth knowing about. So there is the concept of async local, which is kind of it's a blessing and a curse in a lot of cases. And I think did this one show it in here? I know I've written it. Let me just look. Did I leverage? No, I may not have used it here. I may have used it in some closed source. So the idea with an async local is that you will get different instances based upon your async context. So the thing with async local is the thing above the await and below the await will have the same async context. So it's a way to persist a value across the await regardless of which thread picks up before or after, right? There's thread local, which is what we had before, and that will give you a separate instance per thread. The problem is that does not play nice with async and await, because the thread that's before the await and the thread that's after the await might be two different instances. They might be the same. Thread local and async and await do not play nice together. It is don't go down that path unless you know what you're doing. I'll put it that way. But async local can be a nice way of having different service provider instances that survive across your async and await, specifically if you have a unit testing framework and all of your tests are running in parallel, because every modern testing framework supports async unit tests. And those tests are going to have the same async context all the way down, which means rather than if we were to do, we're going to do something a little more fun. Private, static, read-only, async. No, stop it. Async local, iService provider. Yeah, do that. And then we're going to get this guy here, and we're going to just do. We're going to do service provider.value. Right, so this guy, and we may end up, to do add setter, to do expose setting field for testing, right? Like you'll need something of that nature. But what you can now do here, service provider value gets this, and everything that exists, and shut up the nullability warnings. Put this one up. And now everybody who calls into here with a different async context will get a different instance of the iService provider. So if two unit tests run in parallel and they both call app.services, they both get a different instance of the iService provider. It is a way to have a static call and not resolve to the same static instance. Do with this what you will, or maybe don't. But it is a way, if you do end up needing to go down this path of, hey, I need a static instance because my code behind needs to be able to get access to it, but I also want to be able to unit test this. And if I'm unit testing it, this requires me to start my whole app, build up the whole iService provider. I have to inject all the things. If I have tests running in parallel, they both hit this same instance. That's a problem, right? All of those things are real concerns. Because most of the time it's like, well, test A wants to inject a mock for the localization service, but test B that's actually testing the localization really wants to control that. And now we've got a problem, right? You can't have two tests that run in parallel that want different behavior unless they get different instances. And so what we end up doing is the async local lets you split those up, and now test A can set one service provider, test B can set a separate service provider, and then you're off to the races. There is a small gotcha here. If you try to set this value, like for example, we'll just make it public for the moment, right? If you try to set this value, some testing frameworks, and you'll have to look this up because I will probably get this wrong, like X unit uses the constructor as the test setup area where you can set up, any preconditions that you want for all of your tests inside the class. Just use the constructor. Simple, great. Because async local requires the async context, the way you get a different async context is something like a task.run, right? Task factory start new will give you the same thing, right? The thing is, right? So just to be clear, let's see. Async context 1 is here, right? Async context 1 is here, even though there's no wait, right? Async context 2 is here. So anything that's creating a new asynchronous context, which is typically a task.run or a factory start new or the constructor call on a task, will get a different async context. So this technique here only works until you start testing some code that does a task.run. And then you have to be aware of the fact that the thing inside of the task.run is going to get a different instance than the thing outside of it. So it's cool, but it has its limits. And again, use it as you would. So I guess going back to your question, are you overthinking it? Probably not. There is, I think there's judgment calls to be made at each step of the way. So if for things that don't need DI services or need very little and we want them coupled together, like two classes, like it does make sense to have class A instantiated class B. Like some people get this idea with dependency injection, you never call constructors again. It's like, no, it gives us a way of decoupling, but sometimes like coupling is intentional and good. Like sometimes two things really should be coupled together because we really want them to, stay in sync, or, we want their behavior very closely tied together. And if one changes, we want to break the other, right? That's a thing. So dependency injection just gives us the ability to decouple, but that's not always the solution. So if coupling is advantageous, calling new and adding another parameter to your constructor as necessary is potentially the right way to do it. You should consider if you are only passing in constructor parameters so that they can go into another type's constructor, whether a factory makes more sense. And it's kind of up to you whether a full factory class would make sense, whether you want to do a lightweight func type situation, the func situation, or you can even do a custom delegate. You're not limited to func, right? Sometimes because func is kind of overloaded, sometimes it is nice to actually just, like, people forget that they can still do this, right? Like we haven't needed to declare custom delegates for a while, right? But like we can do foo factory delegate as our own type, right? And then rather than it being func, which doesn't intrinsically have a name, we can do our own delegate, and now we've given ourselves the ability to attach a name to the DI factory, right? Same as if we were to make a class, the advantage here is we have a name, we have a type. We can, if func is too ambiguous for the thing that we're doing, right? You can make your own delegate, and now you've been able to attach a name to it. That's pretty cool. So worth considering if a dependency is coming into your constructor just for the purposes of constructing something else, it may be worth considering if wrapping that into a factory, because as that something else changes, you might not want your current class to be affected, right? And if in my case of foo, if I need to add, another dependency to this, it makes sense that I would have to change foo's factory, but I shouldn't really have to go beyond that. Consumers should only need to care about saying, I need to make the thing. And those are generally the two states there of being able to go through and do it. The other thing to consider is if you do have a large number of dependencies that are coming in, of considering if your class maybe is too big. And again, this is going to be a judgment call. There's some people will put rules of if it's more than this many lines or more than this many members or this many constructor arguments, yada yada. I don't know that I can. I'm willing to bet that as the number gets bigger, the rationale has to get stronger. I'll put it that way. So if you have 30 constructor parameters, you better have some real strong rationale as to why it needs to be that way. But it's like splitting hairs over how many isn't worth it, right? But as you add more, you better be more and more sure that this thing isn't violating single responsibility principle or otherwise, right? And sometimes it's like, yeah, it's a violation, but these are guidelines, not hard and fast rules. And sometimes it's like, yeah, it's in our case, it's not worth it. It's not causing us pain yet. We deal with it later, right? Shipping's a feature. We got to have that more. Okay, great. Conscious decisions to violate guidelines are valid, right? As long as they're, explicit. Don't just accidentally do it. Know that you're doing it and know why you're doing it. And then lastly, I think I would say the static resolution is specifically for WPF, right? I would not recommend this in like an ASP.NET Core app. No, right? ASP.NET Core is built around the generic host. It's built to have DI all the way down, right? Of resolving everything, whereas WPF was built before that was popular. So there are some limitations around that. And so especially inside of view code, where oftentimes we don't write unit tests anyway, because view code notoriously cannot be unit tested. It has to be UI tested. You can often get away with this type of static invocation because you weren't going to write the unit tests over that class anyway. So the unit test argument for why we don't do this is kind of out the window. So it's like, well, we weren't going to write the tests anyway. Might as well go ahead and do it, right? And having that, especially for, like I said, I've done it quite a bit for especially iLogger and localization. Have been two cases where I have consistently just said, screw it, I'm not unit testing this class anyway. I'm going to go through and do this. So that was a very long-winded answer. And I don't know that that's a beginner question. The fact that you said dependency injection and factory all in the same things, I don't think counts as beginner. I think that is a step above beginner. My company's been interviewing for an entry-level developer position, and I can tell you some of the people that I have interviewed, A, would not have asked that question, and B, would not have been able to answer it. Because in the interview, I do enjoy asking, dependency injection questions, usually at a slightly more theoretical level of, usually it's in the form of what is it? When would you use it? What are the advantages? For your level, it's a beginner question. I don't know about that. That's kind of one of the weird things I was discussing with one of my mentees earlier, because it is difficult to grade developers, and it's probably true in other professions, but this is the one I know, so we're going to stick with it, of putting people kind of on a stack rank continuum, because there's so many different disciplines and skills that go into an engineer. You can write a test to see which engineer maybe knows C# better, right? We can test people on, knowledge of design patterns and knowledge of C# syntax and features. We could do that kind of thing, maybe, right? It's more, sometimes you get the people who are better at test taking, but, you can kind of get at least an objective number there. But there's a lot of other skills because the Intelitech is effectively a consulting firm. We do a lot of teaching and training, right? We have some people who are really good at teaching and conveying concepts and getting people's attention and having an audience engaged, and they've got that kind of charisma stage presence, and that's great, and that's a valuable asset, and it's really hard to grade, right? There's obviously some people that have it, some people that don't, but we're not looking for a binary answer here. It's more because there's a lot of people in the middle. It's well, how do I draw that line? It's not as easy to do that kind of situation. It's because you could ask the question of, How much do people enjoy doing it? How much do they do it, right? We can get some numbers on that. But how good are they at it? It's a lot harder to come up with. So it's one of those, it's an interesting thing to try to do. And even within side of engineering, right? We've got some engineers that are great at DevOps. We've got some engineers that are great at testing and QA, and like Playwright and all of those types of things. We've got some engineers that are good at like Terraform, infrastructure as code, Bicep, cloud. And it's like, how do you take two engineers that maybe have very disparate levels on different areas and then try to like stack rank them? Because that's not an easy thing to kind of lay out. So that was the discussion earlier. I wouldn't say a debate. Like, it was more of a discussion because I don't know that it's easy to come up with the right answer. And even just the collection of the data, two people, like, especially like in an interview, right? We always try to interview people with at least 2, sometimes 3 interviewers, just so that you kind of get balanced of a opinion, right? Some engineers are good at overcomplicating things. All the best engineers are good at overcomplicating things. If you aren't putting up numbers that are bigger than the grains of sand on the seashore, I mean, what are you doing, right? But we try to get that balanced of opinions to make sure that it's not, one person grading somebody, because how I would hear somebody answer a question, rate them, is probably different than how my colleague would do it. And so we always try to have those couple people in there so that we can kind of, go, well, what about this? And, well, they kind of missed this. Well, I didn't really interpret what they said that way. And, you go back and forth and you try to come to some level in the middle of coming up with it. So, yeah. And I can tell you, based upon that, people who know dependency injection and know a factory pattern are above beginner level. I can say that with a degree of confidence. Is if somebody gets my interview questions around DI and they're like asking those types of questions and doing those types of things, they're probably upper beginner, mid-tier, maybe more. Like, if they get it right, it just means that's the hard part, right? When somebody gets a question wrong, I found their ceiling. When somebody gets a question right, I know a minimum, right? So it's one of those, it's like you got to keep going until you figure out both ends of the spectrum, right? I want to know you're getting these things right, so you're above this, but you're now getting these things wrong. So it's like you kind of just do this maneuver until you can try to get where it's at. Because I told a colleague, she was asking, how do we, run interviews? I'm like, well, it's hard for me to tell you what interview questions I'm going to ask, because I'm constantly trying to find this min-max on all the candidates. So it's like, if they get things right, I'm going to go this way. If they get things wrong, I'm going to go this way. If they're kind of mixing it up, I'm going to jump horizontally and ping them in a different spot. So, yeah. Yeah, Izzy. For people who are unfamiliar, Izzy's Enigma machine, he did some math on it and discovered that his numbers and the heat death of the universe were shockingly close to the same. Or actually, his was significantly bigger. We call that reasonably secure. Okay. Great question, though, Hessen. I appreciate it. I have contemplated, and maybe I'll put this out there for people. There's been times people have asked me the question of, like, putting together a video on, I don't know if it's like interview prep or an idea of going through and doing an interview, but I've considered doing things of that nature. I will say part of why it's hard for me to do something of that nature. So I'm gonna spoil my entire interview process. One of the things that I like to do in an interview is I usually avoid questions that are the stereotypical ones that you will find if you Google, C# interview prep or whatever, right? I don't care about leak code problems or that kind of things, because most of the time when I ask those questions, all I determine is how well the person prepped for the interview, which can tell you something about them, right? If somebody's well prepped, you know, they're going to give you the book answer and straight out. It's like, fine, whatever, right? But I don't actually care about that. What I usually care about is figuring out what somebody's ability is, and ideally how quickly they can grow and learn. And so I try to put them into a situation where they have to think. And so I will oftentimes ask questions that are a little more, I don't want to say offbeat, but I'll kind of come at things from different sides because I want to get somebody out of their prep and into thinking mode. And there's a judgment call there, right? Because sometimes people come in, they're real nervous, and step one is not to get them out of their prep. Step one is to get them to relax and then get them out of their prep, right? Because usually when somebody's nervous, it's really hard to get to figure it out as well, because you just get a lot of nervousness out of them, and that doesn't work either. So step one is usually try to get them to relax, get them talking about something that they like, you know, tell me about a project that went great for you, like things like that, where it's easy for them to talk and have that thing, to try to get somebody relaxed, and then go, that's great, you know, tell me about how did you set up the dependency injection in that ASP.NET Core app? How did you do, you know, the testing for it, right? Like things of that nature, to try to start to tease into those areas without putting them too far off. I don't think everybody interviews this way, by the way. In fact, I know everybody doesn't interview this way. Some people have their set of programming problems, and they like to put up a snippet of code in front of you and say, okay, let's bang out this little bit of code, write me a function that does this. Great. How would you change the function to if the requirement changed like this, right? Like that's a fairly common way that people do it. And I don't mind that. I just feel like it doesn't really show off what somebody knows. I like to get them to write a demo. In interviews, I would suggest a few changes, then ask them what they would change with the new info. Yeah, and like oftentimes, like one of the ones that, so I was in an interview at one point, and I really liked the way they did it. The company in question had a take-home test, basically, of, hey, build me this little sample, right? It was take-home. You had as much time as you wanted. It was not a hard assignment, right? If I had done it just what the brief had asked for, I would have been done in like 40 minutes. It was not hard. I could not resist adding some flair and spent like 8 hours, but that was just because I was having fun. But then in the interview, they basically said they kind of did the same thing, but it was, hey, what about this? Can you explain this bit of code here, right? Because obviously people have AI. They wanted to make sure people didn't just AI the solution, right? You had to explain your code, and in theory, you wrote it. You should be the expert on the stuff you did. So if you do use AI, make sure you know it. But it was really good because there was one point, like one of the engineers like fired up Postman and was like, hey, I'm getting a 400 when I send this payload at this endpoint. How would you debug it? And I was like, that's weird. Let's do it, right? And so we went through a debugging session, and I felt like it was a really good example of being able to see practically how somebody would work in a real situation, right? Like that, it felt nice for that reason. And I think it was one of those, I kind of tucked that away in my head, like, saving that. I might need that idea later of, like, not everybody has the ability to do take-home things and whatnot. And, like, the stuff you can have somebody write during an interview is generally short. You don't have a ton of time, right? Like, most of the time, even if you get somebody for, like, a half-day interview, which is fairly long and excruciating, right? Like, they don't have a ton of time to do it. Versus a take-home, they could spend those extra hours and add some flair and have some fun and do that kind of thing. So it's like, I kind of liked it. It felt nice because it felt like it was a way to actually show off what I knew, versus just quizzing me on how well I know C#. It's like, it works, but it was nice being able to feel like there was some like realistic assessment of ability. That was a very long-winded answer. Yeah. But yeah, and again, I think that's the hard part, is most interviewers are always trying to figure out, like, what do you know and how well can you learn, right? Like, in general, if you're ever interviewing, just know that is usually the key question that the interviewers are trying to answer. I mean, there's other things in there like, would this person be good for the culture? Like there's can I work with them? They've got those things there, but like from a technical level, most of the time, that's what people are interested in assessing is what's your current ability and how well do you learn, right? Because if you score high on both of those, everything else is going to be non-technical side of the fence. Okay, I was shimming in a thingy. Compiler feature required attribute. That's what we were doing. And one of these, did I close it? May have closed it. Okay. Let's go here. It was compiler feature something. Compiler feature required attribute. That's what I want. Compiler feature required attribute. That one. I want you. Gimme. And then we go to machines. I go paste. Let's see. This guy goes away. This guy goes away because those are the same namespaces. And then we go here and we go move you to a new type. And now, yay, it works. Okay, that was a lot of effort to type in the word required. Okay, I got us there though. Okay, so this now needs to be type name is no longer right. It's going to be type and it's going to be new. And I think what I want to do is I actually want the type symbol. So we're going to go here. Ctor type symbol. Like that. Is there a NuGet package with most of those shims? There is. The only thing that part of the reason why I'm bringing them in though is because I want to release this as a NuGet package, and I'm trying to limit the number of dependencies that would go out with it. So I could probably bring it in with private assets, but I don't know. We'll see. If I get too many of these down here, I might just bring this in. But yes, you are correct. There is one out there. I'm thinking I'm going to not derive from namespace. And let's see, type name. I think we can just get away with that. Okay. Let's see here. Type name. Kind of wondering if maybe if this should be type name, it should just be name. We're already in type definition. Name seems implied. Okay, so this goes here. Type. Okay, that goes like that. That goes like that. At some point, I'm going to take these constructor members and cache them and expose them. This is nullable. Is this nullable? Why are you not complaining? This is actually a named type symbol. So we can do that. But I'm just surprised that this thing shows nullable. That must be a... Why are you showing as nullable? You're not nullable. Interesting. When this was a var, it showed nullable on the... No, right? So, okay. Explicit type, right? No question mark. Var. Question mark. What the heck? I'm gonna think that's a debugger error. Yeah, I'm gonna guess that that is a debugger error. Okay, let's go back here, and then I want to do one more for the property as well. Name type symbol. Let's see. This goes away. Oh, and this actually does need to be type symbol. Even though the other one has name type symbol, this one is not. Here we go. Okay. Build. Okay, SDK project builds just fine now. Okay, so. Okay. So now the question becomes, how do we want to expose the properties? Because down here in our thingy-mabobber, right, I still need to expose assembly types, right? So this is going to be public I enumerable type definition assembly types, right? So I'm going to need something of this nature to be able to bring this in. Okay, something like that. And now we need a, that gets me part of the way there for this, right? So now this var is defined. It's called name. We expect it to resolve there, but I now expect type definition to have properties on it. So that means you need to have public I enumerable property. I think you were right. I like definition, Izzy. That was a good call. Points for naming. What did you just add? Let's see. Properties. I am trying to decide if this is a. Yeah. Well, we'll see. Property definition. Okay. What do we got here? I don't know that these are actually what I want. Why do you show two references? Oh, because it generates. Clever, 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 clever. You clever little one. So this is type definition. Let's break you into property definition. Okay, that gives me at least that much. I'm trying to decide. So okay, I read only list. Okay, we're gonna do this for now just to make it happy, just to make the thing happy. Make it work, make it right, make it fast. Make it work, make it right, make it fast. If I say it enough times, eventually I'll believe it. Okay. So this now compiles as a type symbol, and now this should now build despite the fact that it's stupid. Okay, let's see. Type name. This just becomes type dot name. Okay. Go here. Sorry, 1 second. My audio just changed on me. Boom. Okay. Sure, there was another step in there first. Make it compile. Yeah, I mean, I think compile goes with the make it work, right? Like, if it doesn't compile, I don't know that it counts as working. Okay, but it compiled. In the case of source generators, sometimes compiling is actually making it working, because just getting enough there to where it actually compiles, it is actually enough. Okay. Okay, so now we have to figure out how we want to expose types, property types. And I'm kind of wondering if it should be a type definition. It feels like that would be good, but I'm torn, right? Part of me likes exposing it as a system type, but here's the thing. There's a reason the Roslyn compiler doesn't expose it as system type, because that's actually not accurate. Right? Like, we like to think that there's only one system.string, but compiling doesn't mean it's going to do what was wanted. Yeah, that is true. But in the case of a source generator, sometimes it means that that the source generator ran and that it generated something that compiled. Okay. I'm wondering if type symbol is a good way of doing this. Okay. System equality compare default. Okay, what? This is not right. This is not right. What are you? Yeah, no, 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 no. Take me to the default one. I just want to look at this. Okay, so compare kind. Okay, so in my experience, things will compile, then have to make it work, then make it right. Then I don't get to make it fast. Yup. Yup, yup, yup. Consider everything, ignore nullability. I think that's probably okay. I don't know that I like this is one of the areas of this that I'm not sure I actually like either. And the part of the problem with this is because the runtime of this may not match the compile time, right? Which is why we have this funkiness. Thing is, I really want to write this kind of garbage. Like, this is kind of what I want. And it's why I'm somewhat tempted to expose my own thingy-mabobber, because then I could implement the equality on it. Because in most cases, people don't care anything beyond the assembly qualified name. Even the full name is probably good enough, right? Like, most people do not care which version of list this thing is and whether it is net standard or net 6 or whatever. I am tempted to make property type a type definition. We're going to go down that. We're going to go down this route. Okay. So type symbol. That goes there. That'll work, I guess. I mean, I can do this as well. I think that's better. I think it's better. I think it's better. I'm going to make this thing unhappy. Okay, so, but what it means is on type definition, we can now implement the equality. So, simplest thing first, public static bool. What, it's bool implicit, right? Implicit operator. No, not implicit. Okay. And I think what I want to do is a type. There. And I think what I want to do is public string full name. And I think I want this to be full name. Right dot full name. I think this is what I want. It's gonna fail with the generic still. That's probably, at least at present, what I want, I think. So, but let's start with this. One, do you compile now? Do you hopefully compile still? And then I want to put some tests on this. This becomes type definition. And nothing else needs to change. Great. Okay, so I want to do a test or a handful of tests on this because this, what is your problem? It does not override objects. I know. Yeah, go ahead. I think we can just do that. Oh, why is it doing that? Oh, because I don't have access to the hash code class. Ha ha ha. Okay. Possible null reference. We are not even going to deal with that for the moment. That is a future Kevin problem. Okay, so we are going to add new folder. Generators. So first of all, we're going to move these guys here into a generators namespace because that is where they belong. Okay, that handles that. That is a base class for those. It goes in there as well. That is also a base class. You go in there and you go in there as well. Great. Unit test base, I think we keep up at the top. That's fine, but my type definition still exists here. I would like to make a new folder, types. We're just going to unit test our way to victory on this sucker. Let's see, type definition tests. I was actually talking to another colleague earlier this week, and that was, my advice was always ask the question of how I can test this, because I have a theory that the key metric that separates a junior and a senior engineer is the ability to differentiate good from bad code, right? Or the ability to evaluate the quality of code. Phrase it however you'd like. And I think the key aspect that kind of flips that on its head is, oh dear heavens, bad dunce pilot, is knowing how do I test a thing, right? Like that is not a trivial thing to do. Now, for this, how do I get a type symbol? I just want to test that thing. Like, is there a, how do I create one of these suckers? Like I know I could mock it away if I wanted to, but I'd prefer not to. Like I'd prefer to have a real thing I could play with. Do I have to go down the route of like actually generating a real thing and compiling this? Like that, is that really the path I'm going to need to go down? That would be disappointing if that were the case. So I really just kind of want to test my one class in isolation. Should be the ideal use case. Okay, type symbol. Is there really no? Okay, to the Googles. Create itype symbol for testing. What is the magical? Oh, compilation dot. Ah, a compilation has a thingy. Okay. Create. Do you have a thingy? Not quite the thingies I was hoping for. You have thingies, but not the right thingies. Ookie. Can I? I want to know who implements this and if it is possible to do the needful with it. Because it would be great if I could get access to something that implements this. Like Roslyn is well tested, so I have to believe they have a way of doing it, but they may test it from a higher spot. I may end up, oh man, it's going to be a little annoying if I have to go down that path. Probably it doesn't help that I put a 4 in my query. Use compilation to create pointer type symbol. Creating a name type symbol. Oh, this is how you do it. I remember this. Syntax factory. Oh, I remember this. I remember this. I am having bad flashbacks. This is what's being done in the, oh. Yes, yes, yes. I remember. I remember the pain and the suffering and the inevitability. Okay. So in this case, I only need a, okay. we should be able to do test class, because what is this constructor? Is this a name identifier? Okay. My namespace nested test class. Test class symbol, because we are only doing this for the type names, at least at present, right? And so you give me back class declaration. Let's see. Class declaration syntax. Now, how do I get from syntax to symbol? Full span. I realize there's probably this concept of a compilation, but I don't want to. Full string update. All this with. Yeah, so hang on. What was the magical, did the magical thing say to do? Type members of type name symbol first. This was still feeding it into a compilation to be able to add type member. You can use symbol query methods. That is not helpful. That is mildly helpful, because this means that in theory, stop it. You're not helping. Don't know what this name is. Assembly name, test. Great. Okay, great. Thanks. And then it was compilation add. Hey, why do you lie? Add reference, type of object, assembly.location. So basically add in the BCL so that we have access to things like system.object, because that's kind of important. We need things like that. Okay, and then actually get type. Oh, wait a minute. We might actually be okay. Hang on. I got this. We don't need to make our own types. Right? We don't need to make our own types if we can get access to built-in types. Ha 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 ha. Okay. Now we're cooking with fire. Get type by metadata. Assert that int type is not null. Start with that. We are in T-unit land. Do the needful. Make it all play nice together. And then type definition. Use mine. Thank you very much. And then I want to assert that type definition name, let's see, is equal to int 32. Right, and then I want to assert that full name is system int 32. Okay, let's this is the easy test, right? Basic primitive right out of the BCL. Obviously, test fails right out the gate. Makes sense. No idea why. Okay. We should investigate. Okay. Nope. Show me Show me the explanation. Expected it to be equal to int32, but received int. Okay, that actually does not bother me. I am okay changing that expectation. Full name. Wait, did it just literally flip on me? Or did I misread that? Expected it to be equal to int, but received int32. Didn't we just literally do that? Am I expected to be equal, but received? Oh, the full name is the one that's int. Oh, okay. Interesting that the Roslyn API went that way. Okay, great, fine, whatever. Okay. Now, let's see. Let's change this. Type definition. Names for divs. Okay. Now let's get fancier and let's just jump straight in for GUID. No, we're gonna go crazy mode. List as correct name and full name. Okay. Is that the expectation? Okay. Well, it failed. It failed for the reason I think I was expecting. Let's see. Type definition name, but received list. That's actually better for me. I think that is more in line with what I would expect. But received global system collection list of T. That's also better for me as well. Okay. This is good. So the issue here then is the fact that the full name does not appropriately equal. And so the next thing that we want is await assert that type definition, nope, type definition equals type of list is true, because that was what we were trying to do. I don't know if that's actually what I expect, though. Do I expect it to be equal to the... Yeah, well, yes, because we got the open generic. We expect it to be equal to the open generic. Okay. Yeah. So, for people unfamiliar with that term, so open generic, so list normally has a generic parameter where you tell it what are the types of items in this list. So the fancy term is arity. List has an arity of 1. It takes in a single type parameter. So every bucket has a type, right? Could be ints, could be objects, could be strings, whatever. But an open generic is the idea of a generic type like list, right? Where we have this thing here, but we have not yet specified our T. So it's open. It could be, the T is open to be anything. It's flexible. It's like that friend that's like, yeah, we can do whatever you want. Just let me know what it is, right? That is T right now. It is open, right? Once we tell it that it's going to be a list of ints or strings or whatever, now it's like the friend that is maybe a little less up for things. It's like, yeah, I can only do sushi, or insert thingy here. So I think this is what I expect. And now we expected true, was not true. That is actually perfect. So the reason it is not working is because we did other dot full name as the comparison between these things. And there is absolutely, because type.fullname is going to be something very different. And trying to think if there is an easy way to go from a type's name into something that is system.type to Roslyn full name string, right? Like, I think there's libraries out there that have written string libraries like this. Because it's going to end up being a recursive thing. Yeah. Special type. Finding a generic type. Right? Because what's funny here is this person put in the reflection-based name. Oh, interesting. They put in the reflection. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I did the same thing. Consider using compilation get types by metadata name. I'm just wondering if there is a way I can leverage this to appropriately extract out the right information. The problem is during compilation, they may not actually be the same. That's actually an interesting thought, though, is maybe the problem is in my syntax down here. What I really want to be able to say is this of this type? And in theory, like, if I wanted to compare, like, if I was building out that check in a pure Roslyn analyzer, that's not, I would not compare against that specifically. I would pull the type out. Because at the end of the day, what I'm interested in is, does it match this one? So I'm wondering if maybe what would be better is if down here, if rather than doing this and having this actually compile, if if it was something more like this, right? Like if I retrieved this thing back and then I did list type, right? And I make this type definition, right? And I make this work. Because now I don't have to concern myself with the differences between these two. I think I like this better. I think I'm liking this already. Get rid of you. Get rid of you. We're going to have to deal with the nullability here at some point as well. But now this makes life a little bit easier, because now we can have the context class have the idea of retrieving a type. So we add something here that's public type definition get type. I don't know quite what we're gonna how we're gonna end up going down this route. think I like calling it get type metadata name. Might just have to document this a little bit. Yeah, this implementation is complete garbage. None of that is correct. Right? And this is going to be obviously nullable. And then this guy here is going to end up needing enough information to be able to make that call, because ultimately he needs the compilation. But I think we can give him that. Because in all of these cases, this context I think has access to this. Let me just keep going down a little bit. Generation attribute syntax. Does this context have a value of this whenever the compilation changes, blah, 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 blah. So that is useful, because now we have an incremental compilation provider, which ultimately these other ones are just compilation providers, but it means we have to sync these things together. Probably okay. That's interesting, because that changes my API. Because I want the context to have this, but I only need it to have this when this method is going to be called. So maybe it shouldn't live on the context. Maybe it shouldn't live on the context. It should potentially live on the generator itself. Maybe that's better. Type. We do that. We put it down here. String data name. Yeah, so something of that nature, right? So if list type null, we're gonna just bail. Oh, return generation result, skip. All right, we can't do anything. Okay, show. That gets us there. Does that actually help? Because that means now on the generator itself, I need to have a way of making this method work. It's probably possible. Let's continue implementing. So this was based upon attribute generator, which was this guy. So we are going to go here. This is going to go like this. And now we're going to go into here. And I'm going to put you up a little bit higher, because we ended up doing that kind of same thing there. So now if I just steal something of this nature, right? This guy's going to go here. This guy's going to go here. I do wonder if I'm going to want one that's actually like things decorated. or attributes with metadata name. I don't think I want any of this stuff. Syntax provider. Because we don't need... I don't think I need any of this. But what I need out of this is this guy. I need one of these. So what exactly are you doing that I need to grab? Let's see. Nodes with attributes matching. Or attribute with simple name. You're the iteration. What exactly? Qualified, contains metadata type name. Blah, blah, blah. This is going to be the answer to... This is going to be the answer to my... that's not the right... Here. This one here. Just for later reference, right? We're just going to shove that in there for later. Okay. But what I am more interested in is how do I get one of these providers from this syntax thing? Syntax value provider. Because ultimately this guy wants me to output an incremental value. But you don't have much. Oh, syntax provider. Duh. So the thing right bloody in front of me. Yeah, that thing. Okay. Okay. So let's see. Node cancellation token return bool. So node token, and then is target node get generation context. Let's see. Detected virtual is, bool is target node. For the moment. Okay. What's your problem here? Generator syntax context. This is actually context. So let's go. Generator syntax context. Great. Okay, so those two guys are being built. Everyone's happy. Nope, that's the wrong button. Move unnecessary bits. Why do you think you're necessary still? Assembly type context. Just curious why I can't do this. I can. Let's see. Where item is not null. Yep, so let's just not do any of that. Okay. So I think we do need some of this stuff. Create builder generation output result. So the generation output result was private over here. I think what we're going to do is we're going to pull this guy up and internal him. Move him to his own spot so he can be happy. Get output hint name. That was just gonna go right here. Connected virtual. Sure, that'll work. Okay, so that gets me into there. Now I think it compiles, and I think it probably blows up with a no ref. This is less interesting of a test now. We're going to keep it. No reason not to. So just the 2 warnings left. Great. Okay, so he is matching on all syntax nodes. And I think we can probably go node got kind is kind. Oh, that gets the kind. This checks the kind. Let's see. Syntax kind. Let's see. What do we actually need to match on here? Because we really just want the types. And this is like, I mean, we can go after the class declaration, but that's literally going to get me classes. So we're going to do something of this nature. And I just like putting the operator at the end because then the lines line up nicely. This is going to be context, because that'll get me the syntax nodes, but because this wants the assembly type context. What did the attribute one do here? Get generation context. Code implementation. What exactly did you... It went after the symbol. Let's see. Context. Yeah, the thing is I'm not going to have a symbol. Declared symbol. It's going to end up, and this is where ancestor declaration syntax. Type context, and we just need to get the types into here. Okay. Well, we can clean this up. Oh, I'm glad tomorrow is a holiday. So for those of us in the United States, July 4th is Independence Day. For most of us who don't work weekends, we get, the 4th of July would be Saturday for me. I get the 3rd off as a holiday. So it's a Saturday. Yeah. Yeah. So conveniently, most places will do this. If the holiday lands on a Saturday, you get the Friday off. If the holiday lands on a Sunday, you get the Monday off. At least that's how my company does it. That way you always get a day. So means that tomorrow is technically a holiday for me, but it has been a heck of a week. Okay. So What did I set this up as? The thing that I'm noticing that is somewhat obnoxious here is how does it know that the return assembly type context? Can this literally be anything? Because I'm kind of wondering if this could just be a type definition. That would make my life a lot easier. Because ultimately what I want to do is I want to gather these things up and then switch them into the context, which will be the one big thing, and then call generate. Because this allows for a select mini, but this is where item, and what I really need is an aggregate in the middle. Because I don't think I want to generate one. I don't think I want to generate one at a time. I think I want to actually. Do I want to generate one at a time? Because this generator, this for each doesn't need to exist. Well, it kind of needs to exist. It kind of needs to exist. Because it basically says, I want to run on all types. I want to find the thing, and then I want to generate a bunch of stuff. But it does make me wonder if I were to build this in a real project, if I would actually go through and use an attribute on a property and decorate my DB sets. Right? Like this is a contrived example of doing this, but I'm wondering if I would actually do gen service, right? If that's actually the way I would go through and do this. And anchor it on the attribute. Or because if I anchor it on the attribute, I have the ability of leveraging my other stuff. And I'm wondering if that's better. Is there a legitimate reason why? Do I have, because I realize I wrote this down as I want to iterate over all the things. I'm just trying to decide if I actually want to iterate over all the things or if I could do. No, I have to be able to iterate over all the things. That's why. Because one of the use cases that I have for this requires you to look at all of the types, make some tree shaking comparisons, and you wouldn't generate the same thing when you look at the whole as if you were to look at the individual parts, because there's duplication and things that get dropped based upon references. But I do need to iterate over all the types. So this is valid. This is valid. But it does mean then I need to get all of the classes types, structs are allowed, in an assembly. This thing is going to be, because this is an incremental values provider, right? And I don't know that this thing really has into a single. Oh, look at that. Useful for when you need to aggregate multiple values into a single collection to process them together. Yup. Seems like that might be exactly what I want. But I want the null. I want a transform, though, in the middle. Do you not let me... Like, this would force the enumeration, I believe. But it doesn't give me... incremental value provider source into a single incremental values provider T. So it takes your T and gives you another provider that contains the array of the T's. So that, okay. That means that this is now items, right? Rather than item. Yeah, so this is now enumerable of type definition. This would then be assembly type context. Assembly context gets new, right? And this becomes assembly types, gets items, right? Great, great, great. This now becomes assembly context. Oh, that goes like that. And then that goes there. And then assembly context goes like that. And then we do the needful. Okay, so that's fine. Gets me to there. Boy, my brain is fading. My brain is fading. My Mountain Dew is empty, and this is not a good thing. Mountain Dew is definitely fading. Might need to crash a little earlier. Okay, before anything goes wrong. Nope. Oh, I wanted to show this cool thing off. Right, so in the latest version of Kraken, they if I go help release, right? There's okay, so 12.2.1, right? There's not a ton of stuff in it, right? It's a point release. But the one I want to highlight, right? The embedded terminal now dims. Why is it not drawing green arrows? There we go. When focused elsewhere in the app, making it clear where the keystrokes will land. This has been a major frustration to me. Is I will constantly do Control B to make a new branch. The problem is, if focus is in the terminal, Control B goes to the terminal rather than to the rest of the app. It's like, I just want to make a thing. But now the fact that it dims means I now have a visual indicator down here that Control B is no longer going to go to the terminal, and I can now in fact press it and do assembly types and have that go through. That is really nice. Like, sometimes the littlest features make the biggest difference, and just that kind of little UX change of, you know what, we're going to dim the text so that Kevin stops getting confused and annoyed when he goes Control B to make a new branch, right? That would be annoying. So again, little point release, you don't expect big things, right? Bunch of bug fixes and things down here of different stuff. The merge pills appears for GitLab, don't care, right? Most of this release wasn't exciting to me, except for that one line, right? Embedded terminal dimming slightly. Like, that's nice. That's a really nice feature. So, points awarded, Kraken. We still love you. Okay, what was this one here? Token. Some point I should probably flow the token through as well. And at least make it obvious. Should probably flow the token. Let's add that to the list. Let's see. Flow cancellation token through generate methods. Okay, cool. Okay, I may go crash. I also have to finish dealing with some dishes upstairs before I can sleep. It's going to make this a little harder. So, may wrap it up there. Hopefully this is the last week I'm this tired. I made some changes that hopefully are going to buy me some time so I'm not so tired every time we get going on one of these later streams, because the last several they've been rough. And caffeine is only carrying me so far. JC, hello, goodbye. My apologies. I am a bit tired, but hopefully next week I'll have an announcement coming where I'm not going to be quite as burned out and tired anymore, and it'll be wonderful. So it's a good thing for everybody who enjoys watching these streams. So my apologies for dropping right as you were getting up, but I think I need to call it and roll for the night. Go do some dishes and then crash. So with that, as always, I'll tell everybody happy coding. See y'all next time.